Hey, thanks for joining us for This Week in Evansville. I'm Johnny Kincaid, and as we close in on the municipal elections coming up, we're going to spend our time focused on the mayoral election for the city of Evansville. I know we've spent a lot of time with it, but this is an important election. And we want to make sure that you go into the voting booth with all of the information possible. So we're going to do things a little bit different this week because we're going to take the two podcast episodes that we had with candidates, only two because unfortunately Stephanie Terry, the Democrat running for mayor, did not have the time to be able to do an interview with us. We're sorry that that's the case. So we're going to be doing a comparison between the Libertarian candidate, Michael Daugherty, and the Republican candidate, Natalie Rascher, and give you a chance to kind of see what the differences are there, give you more information so that you're able to make an informed vote. Now, if you watched both of those interviews, great. If you didn't watch them, you may want to check this out to make sure that you see how they compare side by side when answering some specific questions. And be sure also that you share this with as many people as possible. All right. So do the like thing, do the share thing, do the subscribe thing, do the comment thing. Just make sure that that a lot of people know about the existence of this, because numbers are going to count in this election big time. And when I'm talking numbers, I'm not talking about the margin of votes. I'm talking about the number of votes cast. Voter turnout is huge in this. And traditionally, for Evansville, only 20% of registered voters show up at the polls for a municipal election. 1 out of 5. Can you believe that? 1 out of 5, 20%. That's all that show up. You walk down the street, 4 of the out of 5 people that you see did not cast a vote in a municipal election here in the city of Evansville. So we want to make sure that we encourage people to get out there and vote, take them to the polls, do whatever it takes to get them there so that they're casting their vote. On top of that hurdle, which is the volume of votes part of it, then there are also thousands of people who vote straight ticket. And that total number, somewhere in, I think, maybe the 8,000 range or so, could be about 40% of the total votes cast are going to be straight ticket. That's huge. And we really need to drive those numbers up as much as possible at the polls. First of all, so that we truly get a sense of what the people of Evansville want in leadership for the community. And right now, man, there's a lot going on with this election. There's a ton. You know, we'll talk a little bit about campaign finance as we go along here, but there's been what some people are seeing as a change in momentum. A big shift has taken place that in the fundraising in the last days left leading up to the election, the person getting a lot of fundraising support right now is Stephanie Terry, the Democrat running. And the reason for that is because now people are of the thought that it's very possible that Michael Daugherty may have actually drawn enough votes away from the Republican, Natalie Rascher, to actually hand the election over to Stephanie Terry. I'm not saying that's going to be the case. I'm saying that's part of the thinking that is going on right now when it comes to elections here in Evansville. So it is, and it's been a big money election, big money campaign. You know, we've been looking at the kind of money that has rolled in, and contributions have amounted to about $1.5 million. In the campaign for mayor of Evansville. $1.5 million. Now, the candidates could hand every single voter $66 each to buy their vote with that kind of money. Go to the polls, have them just hand you the money instead of them spending it on all of the media and the mudslinging and the mailers and all of that stuff. All right. There'll be about anywhere from 19 to 21,000 people, if history bears itself out, that will cast votes on Tuesday in the election. It's a number I'm kind of ashamed of, to be honest with you. I would love to see the people of Evansville take a more active interest in the future of this community because I love this city. And I really want what's best for this city. And we are so much better served when the people get out there and get involved in the election process, right? Enough with the lecture. Let's get down to taking those comparisons here. Because one of the things I wanted to know from the candidates was about their vision for the city of Evansville. So I asked them, where do you see Evansville 5 years down the road if you're elected?
Well, I think first and foremost, you're going to see a change within the Civic Center and how government works as a whole. We don't leverage technology as well as we could, but this is an opportunity where that next generation is going to step in and, really kind of push people in a different direction. We'll have several retirements over the next 5 years, and ensuring that we've got the skill set, the individuals that can fill those roles, and then again with that idea of leveraging technology, I think our systems will just work much better together, and it will be less of a burden to work with city government.
So I would say after 4 years of my administration, we have a control on our finances and our financial spending. We have revitalized all our parks. We have resolved all the issues with our infrastructure deficiencies in our roads, our sidewalks. We have good elected officials in place, and we've partnered with citizens on boards and commissions. It took 3 to 4 years to build that. Now we start looking to the future and we say, what can we do with additional parks? What can we do with additional infrastructure? And hopefully by the end of the first term, in 3 to 4 years, we have a better Evansville. We have a better population, a more tax base, and a safer Evansville, because number one on my goal is a fully staffed police force. And so within my administration, that's what I would see after the first 3 to 4 years. Then we start visualizing in the future and see how do we spend those tax dollars more efficiently to grow Evansville, grow economically.
All right, so you can see the difference there between the two candidates when we're asking them about where we'll be after a first term for either one of the candidates as mayor, and they very definitely have different approaches to answering that question. And then one of the visions that is on the horizon for Evansville to address is how we envision the riverfront. Now, the Evansville riverfront used to be this meant as this incredible showcase, and they spent huge amounts of money on finding out what the people really wanted in the riverfront, and tried to design a riverfront kind of based on that. And it hasn't been kept up very well, number one. But also, it's due for a new facelift. So we're going to spend the money on the survey again to talk to people and get a vision for the riverfront. And I asked the candidates whether they had a vision themselves of what should happen with that riverfront. And first, we'll get the answer from Michael Daugherty. We're back now we're going to do another round of survey data to figure out what to do with our riverfront. That was supposed to be our showcase decades ago, and we don't take care of what we've got. So we're up for another round of that, unfortunately.
And but I was told we paid the consulting company $4 million to do that first round of consulting on the riverfront. Mm-hmm.
And if I could get $4 million to consult, I would say to the city of Evansville, look at what Owensboro did,
yes,
and do that, because Owensboro's done a wonderful job at their riverfront.
Yes, and that's why I went over and met with the mayor of Owensboro, Tom Watson, and asked him, what are you doing over here that we need to mimic?
Do you have a vision at all for what may happen with that riverfront?
No, my vision is whatever our residents say they want to see, then that's what we will work toward. I've heard a lot of different ideas that have come out of some of those visioning sessions, and it all sounds great to me. We have to just look at, of course, cost and feasibility, and making sure that some of the ideas that come out we can actually do. I did hear one about like a tunnel underneath the river, and I was like, well, I don't know, but who knows, right? We actually had someone that proposed damming up the river and turning it into a lake. And again, I don't think that's a possibility.
I don't think Corps of Engineers will go for that.
Yeah, exactly. But it's good to have those big ideas, and then we get to ask more questions. Well, why would we want to do that in the first place? And this individual started talking about recreation and having recreational opportunities there on the riverfront. So whatever comes out of this big master plan, I think that it will be exciting for our community. And again, it's not just Evansville alone. Newburgh is a part of this. Mount Vernon is a part of this as well.
All right, I've heard a couple of people get up in arms about the answer to that question from Natalie Rascher about whether there's a vision for the riverfront or not. And when she says no, and that we'll do what the people of Evansville want, something I want to just kind of point something out, and that is that her answer is a sign of a generational difference. All right. I don't want to see people get up in arms about that answer, because it really is generational. People of Generation Z, Gen Zers, tend to be more collaborative and consensus building in the decision-making process. So that's just kind of, and Michael, being a little bit closer to the baby boomer generation, he thinks more in terms of the traditional definition of leader, of everybody follow me, and so that's the difference there, and you'll see that difference play out in their style of management, in their style of governing for whichever one's elected. That generational difference will definitely be there. Both of the candidates, actually, and Stephanie Terry's included in this category as well, they have all talked a lot about our situation with policing and crime and how we deal with all of that. So first, we threw the question to Natalie Rascher about how we improve things with our policing in the city.
Public safety has been something that I've spoken to since day one whenever I decided to run for election. And it's something that, while I don't think we've ignored public safety, but I think sometimes we think what we're doing is okay or it's enough. And I think that our police department has suffered from that because they're not getting paid enough. And I would love to be able to give them more training, more resources, more tools. They do a phenomenal job. Mm-hmm. I mean, my goodness, it was a year ago, the Walmart incident that happened.
Right.
And when we have things like that happen in our community, and to see the response and everything on the other side, we have an amazing public safety system here. And I'm going to loop in firefighters and dispatch, right, and, everyone that's working to keep Evansville safe. I think what we need to start looking at more is, why are we seeing an increase in these violent crimes? Are there other wraparound services that aren't being provided? It's not from a lack of trying on our side.
Right.
It's truly, I believe, where as a community, if we can figure out more ways to come together and meet some of the other needs, we'll see reduction.
Yeah, we have for those homicides or those murders, we don't even have a dedicated homicide department on our police force. That will change under my administration. And some of the statistics that I've shared is Evansville ranks 40th in the United States for violent crime per capita. Mm-hmm. That's ahead of Portland, Oregon. That's ahead of a lot of very dangerous cities. And again, it doesn't get talked about, especially in election years. I've brought out a lot of information at this year's election, and I hope the voters really see that how transparent I'm being and bringing these issues to light. Otherwise, it would all be flowers and rainbows between the two opponents.
Now, one of the other things that's really important for any city is what their education system is like. Good schools will attract new businesses, will attract new people living there, and that's a very important component. But the schools operate completely independently of the city. So I thought it would be interesting to address that particular issue with both of the candidates in asking what they see the role of mayor is when it comes to education.
Right now, there's been no role for the mayor and EVSC. The Department of Education controls everything separate from the city, but the mayor has to lead by example and partner with EVSC, even if it's as simple as creating a basic communication channel and say, you know what, I'm going to sit at the board meetings and just listen, take it in. I'm going to take an interest in EVSC and speak with the superintendent. How can I help you? How can I partner with you to help move Evansville forward? Because the first thing people ask when they come to Evansville, what's the best school for my child, whether it's academics or sports or something else. But that's the first thing that's asked. Then you talk about crime. Then, the housing. You go through those factors. Education's number one for people with kids. So there has to be good communication, and I haven't seen that.
Is what do you see the mayor's role in? Because education, if your schools aren't good, people don't want to relocate to your community.
Sure.
So what role does the mayor have in education?
Right. So the civics teacher inside of me says none, right? But really, that's not the case. Now, we do have our school board, of course, and the superintendent of the EVSC, and the goal, or at least the goal that I would have if mayor, is to walk alongside, the superintendent and that whole school board to make sure that what we're doing as a community is supporting their efforts in educating our children. And whenever we find gaps, we can work together to try to close those. I'm never going to walk in and, make suggestions on their curriculum or, how they do their schedule or, days off, things like that. That needs to be left to the school board and of course, the superintendent. But really, I think champion for the EVSC, for our diocese, for all of our schools here in Evansville, that will be my role in making sure that we have the resources as a community to support on the back end. We're not at the forefront of education in the mayor's office, right? We're providing other services.
Right.
And that's what I look forward to, because there are a lot of great programs that I've seen in other cities. There's a lot of great programs we're doing here, and I think we can just continue to make them more robust.
The city of Evansville is in debt, and that's not an unusual situation to be in by any stretch of the imagination. But we've got a lot of bond debt, and I took the opportunity to ask both Natalie and Michael about the nearly $1 billion in bond debt that we have.
We fix it by stop spending money on frivolous projects. That's led by the mayor, and the mayor creating the budget. The voters vote in a fiscally conservative mayor, and we stop this ridiculous spending. We don't build anything new until we can afford to maintain what we have. That's what I said, and that's resonated with a lot of voters. It's resonated with a lot of people that have come on board. It's that simple. We stop spending money. If you don't have the money in your bank account, you don't go out and buy a $100,000 car. I'm sorry, you don't. Government expects you to be fiscally conservative and balance your bills, but they don't do that because it's not their money. It's your money, the taxpayers, and they don't care. They don't care how they get it. They don't care if they got to sell and lease 6 miles of streets for privatized to raise bonds. They don't care. They feel like we'll just tax more and we'll get more money.
And that has led us to about $1 billion in bond debt.
Yes.
That is that a hole that you can dig yourself out of? I mean, is that?
It will take time. It's not something that'll happen overnight, but you stop all of the infrastructure projects that aren't required. You actually say no to a project or two that, you know what, we can afford to build it right now, but in 5 years and 10 years, we can't afford to maintain it. We have to have a mayor that has the vision to look forward and say, what's the total cost of this project? Not just the cost to build it, the total project cost, including maintenance for 5 or 10 years. And then, are we going to put in a budget to replace it? That's the vision Evansville and you, the taxpayers, deserve.
All right, now let's talk money.
Okay.
Okay. We have considerable bond debt as a city right now.
Yes.
And again, my opinion, for whatever it's worth, is that it's because we keep buying shiny new things, right?
Okay.
New thing comes on the horizon, we want to get that for the city. But the problem is that keeps mounting up to the tune of we're somewhere in the $1 billion range. And then it puts, and then the budgeting process doesn't include, in many cases, the maintenance and the upkeep and the fact that things become obsolete and have to be replaced. And that puts us in the position then of leasing streets in order to pay for equipment that's needed, but nobody put it in a budget so that we would have that there when the day comes. Is that a function of the mayor's office overseeing budgeting, or where does that fall as far as the responsibility to make sure that we're taking care of what we've got?
Right. Well, part of the fiscal responsibility is within the mayor's office, but part is also with city council, being the fiscal body. But whenever we're looking at our budget as a whole and also the amount of bonds that we have, so we have just under $1 billion in bonds, but
Close. Close.
hey, it's under, but still 75.6% of that is for water and sewer utility. And that is for all of the mandatory upgrades that we have got to do in replacement of systems. So whenever you're looking at really only about 25% is, bonds that we've used for, like you say, the new things, the shiny things, those are
But
bonds.
that's still $200 million.
Sure. How much do you think an ice rink costs, though, or the upkeep for one?
Well,
We're looking at $15 million. I think it was right around $15 million for some upkeep with Swander over the last couple of years.
Sure.
And we have certain bonds that are specific for parks and recreation use. We cannot use them for anything else. So as much as we would like to say, well, we just shouldn't even use that, or that should be used over here, we know that quality of life measures, have to be here. We know that we are going to have to, upgrade. I think it was the cooling tower. And again, I'm not an ice rink, pro
Right.
by any means, but I believe it was the cooling tower, the cooling system within Swanders that had to be replaced. And that facility is several years old, which, it actually went, I believe, past its longevity. So replacing that, it's not that we don't budget to put those things in there. It's that our budgeting is surrounded around bringing out a bond, because we're never going to have $15 million laying around to then replace something that we know has a 15-year lifespan. So that's part of the process, I feel like, in city government. People hear this and they're like, oh my gosh, that's an outrageous number. You look around at other cities throughout the state, they are very, very similar in terms of what their population is and how much they spend. Now, we're a little bit different in the terms of the water and sewer. That's a whole separate line item. So whenever I'm looking at our debt, really it's, we'll call it $200 million. We're still going to have to pay for all of the water and sewer, but there's a lot of other things that go into that piece as well. And I believe there's some federal funding out there that we will be able to apply for that can help ease some of that burden as well.
all right. The average person has really no understanding of how all of that system works. From kind of the average guy standpoint, what people, I think, hear from, for example, city council meetings is this reallocation, the shuffling of funds, basically. Right. And people go, oh, they're having to move it from here over to here in order for us to survive. And it's the kind of shuffle that you and I can't do on our personal checking account. We can't.
Yeah.
We can't make those kind of moves. We can't sell our driveway. We can't do bonds. So we hear the financial story from the city, and frankly, it just sounds like some of it is just, kind of a con isn't the right word, but it
feels
sounds shady.
like a shell game almost,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I completely understand that, and this is where I would say let's break it down to a different level, right? Mm-hmm. Let's say we've got in our checking account, we have our budget, right, for our house. X amount goes to groceries and to spending money, or all of our other bills, all of these things. Mm-hmm. And so if we have call it $2,000 of needs, within a month. Probably more, but we're just going to use these numbers. 2,000, and then we're only bringing in $1,000 from our job. Okay, we've got $1,000 deficit. So how do we make $1,000? Well, we have to figure out different ways. Now, some people would go and get another job. Then they'd be working two jobs, and then they could meet those needs. Or, you could be maybe an entrepreneur and say, what, I've got this driveway right here, and it's really close to this event venue, and so we're going to start charging people to park here. And that excess revenue that we receive from this is what we're then going to use to make sure that there is no deficit on a monthly basis. It doesn't necessarily work like that. Mm-hmm. When you're looking at these budgets, these very large budgets for the city. But whenever you have access to other dollars, that's whenever we have to make those shifts and rearrange things. So if the state comes down and they say, hey, you know what, we actually have, excess funding, but it's only funding for Parks and Recreation. You go, great, we would love to apply for that funding. Currently, we have $12 million. We're going to get an extra $5 million. We don't put that in the general fund. We would put that directly into Parks and Recreation. And so now some of that money that we're pulling from the general fund into Parks and Rec can be reallocated to a different area. Mm-hmm. So we were able to meet a need by using other dollars. Mm-hmm. And so I understand whenever people see those line items kind of move back and forth and those dollars rearranged, it would throw up a red flag, absolutely.
Campaign finances are a big story for 2023. A lot of money has been raised, close to $1.5 million raised so far in this mayor's race. That includes $952,000 raised by Natalie Rascher, $416,000 by Stephanie Terry, and about $38,000 raised by Michael Daugherty. And of course, the question is there of, your campaign finance, so much of that money is, and when you look through the campaign finance reports, you're seeing all of these engineering firms from not only around Evansville, but also from the Indianapolis area as well, and money from consulting firms and other companies from all around the country and different industries and so on down the line. Obviously, companies that want to do business with the city of Evansville. So it does raise a legitimate question. Does money coming from all those PACs and corporations buy any kind of access to the mayor?
It's very sad and unfortunate that this mayor race is bringing out this much money to be spent. And, and somebody asked me the other day, so what are your thoughts? Do you think politics are for sale in Evansville? I think the proof is in the financial statements.
I mean, we've seen $1 million mayor races before where both sides had raised somewhere in the neighborhood of $500,000. Mm-hmm. We've seen that before here in Evansville. But this kind of, there's such a disparity there between the top funder. I expected that to be much closer, honestly. But for the job of mayor, that just sounds like a whole lot of money to spend.
Yes, it is. So with me not taking any of those donations, if I'm elected mayor, I'm entering office with 0 favors owed. That's my new hashtag. From people over politics to 0 favors owed.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of money for wanting to be mayor?
Well, I would say it's in line with what every other competitive race around the state, what the city our size or larger is doing. This is something that we knew would be very expensive because let's face it, every race is. But the challenges that I had from the get-go was name recognition. Best way to get your name out there is through media.
Yeah.
Media is the most expensive part. And most people don't realize, but in order to keep a commercial on air for 1 week, and the time slots we had was about $50,000. So the majority of that spending is just to make sure that those commercials are on air. Now, the good part of that is those go directly to, of course, the local broadcast companies that we are putting our commercials on. So some of those dollars are staying here locally. And then whenever we're looking at all of the print materials and, Natalie Rascher swag that we're giving away, we were very intentional on spending those dollars locally because we know if the dollar is spent locally, it goes directly back into our economy. I'm proud to say that I was able to do that. I believe Stephanie was able to spend a lot of her money here locally as well. Unfortunately, I don't think the Libertarian candidate spent any of that money here locally outside of his media buys. And so if we're being responsible with those dollars, those campaign dollars, and we're pushing them back here in this local economy, that's wonderful. But again, the object is to make sure people know my name, understand the vision and everything that I'm wanting to do for Evansville. And that's my service to this community is making sure they know and understand who their next mayor is. And so for me, I think it's money well spent, but also I think that it does show a large amount of support, not just here in Evansville, but from individuals that are, within this region and, within Indiana as a whole. And I think it was 126 pages is what that finance report was. Yeah. And over half were just individual donors. So it comes from PACs, from large corporations, from small businesses, and all the way down to, my sweet neighbor down the road that, gave me $100. And that's what I absolutely love.
In the world of PACs and corporate donors, do those donations buy any influence?
No, and that's one thing that I always find interesting whenever people make that assumption at times or that accusation. And I come from a world of HR. No one's buying any favors from me. My job is to make sure that I stay neutral and that I have a good understanding of what's going on, and I make my decisions independent of any kind of outside influence. It's also, being in the CPA world and public accounting world for so long, independence is very important. And that's where I appreciate those corporate dollars or PAC dollars that come in, absolutely. But it doesn't ever mean that they have an advantage or a step above someone that maybe didn't donate. It's going to be whoever's best for the job.
Do you think that they have an expectation, though, when they write that check? I
am pretty transparent, and whenever I talk to individuals, whenever I say thank you, but they know that it is not pay to play here in Evansville if I'm your mayor.
Overall, it is going to come down to that voter turnout. It's just as simple as that. So hopefully you've heard enough here and in that comparison to motivate you to go and cast a vote, because there are differences between the candidates. And certainly Stephanie Terry has a story that I really truly wish that she'd come on this show to be able to share with us. But unfortunately that wasn't the case, and we're presenting what information we have available to you at this time. And we thank you for joining us. Be sure that you like it, that you share this, that you comment, do all of those things to let other people know about this, because we want to send you to the polls with a good knowledge about the candidates. And what we've tried to do through this entire series has been to just educate you about the candidates so you can make an informed decision and choice. I'm Johnny Kincaid. Thanks for joining us this week, and join us again in the future for This Week in Evansville.